Oi Backpack, and welcome to the latest episode of Notorious. This time we will be looking at the grisly case of Katherine Knight. Katherine Mary Knight was born on the 24th of October 1955 and was the first woman in Australia to be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Before Katherine was born, her mother had an affair with a co-worker of her husband, a man called Ken Knight, and this caused a huge scandal in the town. Her mother, Barbara, then moved to Moree with her new lover, but her 4 sons did not go with her. The 2 elder sons remained with their father, and the 2 younger sons were sent to be raised by an aunt in Sydney. Barbara went on to have 4 more children with Ken, 2 of which were twin girls, and Katherine Mary Knight was the younger of the 2. Within the household, it was common knowledge that Katherine's mother would be raped by her father up to 10 times a day, and Barbara would share inappropriate details about her sex life with her daughters. Katherine had complained to her mother that her boyfriend was asking her to do something sexual she didn't want to, and her mother's response was to tell her to put up with it and stop complaining. The only person Katherine was close to throughout her childhood, other than her twin sister, was Oscar Knight, her uncle. She was devastated when he took his own life in 1969 and says she is still visited by his ghost. She was said to be a loner and a bully at school. However, there is evidence that she was a good student and received rewards for her model behaviour. On leaving high school, she began to work in a fabric factory, and then soon after started working in what she described as her dream job, cutting offal in an abattoir. She was promoted quickly and given a set of butcher's knives, which she hung above her bed, where, she said, they would always be handy if she needed them. She hung those tools above her bed everywhere she lived, up until the time she was incarcerated. I'm thinking they are probably a contraband item in prisons. At the abattoir, she met David Stanford Kellett, who had a history of heavy drinking and causing tragic accidents as a consequence. While dating Katherine, he would also occasionally date her twin sister. When David got into fights, Katherine would be there with her fists to back him up, and was known for her intimidating and violent nature towards anyone who upset her. David and Katherine were married in 1974, and Katherine's mother gave David some advice at this juncture. She said, "You better watch this one or she'll effing kill you. Stir her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing and you're effed. Don't ever think of playing on her or she'll effing kill you." On their wedding night, they consummated the marriage 3 times. When David fell asleep, Katherine got angry and tried to strangle him. Throughout the marriage, Katherine burned all of David's clothes and fractured his skull with a frying pan. The police wanted to press charges, but Katherine talked David out of it. Shortly after the birth of their first child, David left Katherine and moved to Queensland. The day after this, Katherine was seen pushing her new baby's pram down the high street in a violent way, throwing the pram from side to side. She was then admitted to St Elmo's Hospital in Tamworth and diagnosed with postnatal depression. Several weeks later, when she was released, Knight then placed her 2-month-old daughter on a railway line shortly before the train was due. She then stole an axe and went into town to threaten and kill several people. Thankfully, by chance, her daughter was found in the nick of time by someone foraging by the railway line. Following this terrifying event, Katherine was arrested but taken back to St Elmo's and then promptly signed herself out the following day. A few days later, Katherine slashed the face of a local woman with a knife and demanded she take her to Queensland to find David. The woman escaped at a service station, but before the police arrived, Katherine took a young boy hostage at knife point. She was overpowered by police and then taken to Morisset Psychiatric Hospital. Katherine told hospital staff she intended to kill the mechanic at the service station for repairing David's car. therefore allowing him to leave, and then travelled to Queensland to kill both David and his mother. When she was released in August 1976, she was discharged into the care of that very same mother-in-law, and she and David resumed their marriage, moved to Woodbridge, and had another child. Katherine found work at Dinmore Meat Factory for a time, until eventually leaving Kellett in 1984 and moving back to her parents' house, and then eventually renting a property back in Aberdeen. She returned to work at the abattoir but hurt her back and claimed a disability pension. She was also given a home by the government. Katherine then had a relationship with a man called David Saunders. During that relationship, she cut the throat of his 2-month-old dingo puppy, telling him she'd do that to him if he had an affair. She knocked him out with a frying pan, but I suppose then at least he evaded a skull fracture. She paid off his home with her workers' compensation and decorated it with machetes, pitchforks, old boots, animal skulls and skins. She hit Saunders in the face with an iron and stabbed him in the stomach with a pair of scissors. She also cut up all his clothes. Saunders then went into hiding, and who can blame him? And when he returned to see his daughter, Katherine filed a fraudulent protection order against him, falsely claiming that she was afraid. Katherine then had a 3-year relationship with John Chillingworth. Within this relationship, she followed the same pattern. She became pregnant very early, and also the relationship was abusive. She began having an affair with a man named John Pricey Price. She then left John Chillingworth for Pricey. Pricey waited more than 5 years before Katherine moved in with him and his 2 sons because he was aware of her reputation. They argued over Pricey's refusal to marry Katherine, and she reported him to his workplace for theft by taking videos of out-of-date medical kits Pricey had scavenged from the work tip. Pricey's boss had no choice but to dismiss him. The same day he was fired, he kicked Katherine out of the house and they lived apart for a few months, but then Pricey resumed the relationship. The scale of their arguments meant that by then, his friends refused to associate with him while he was still with Katherine. The situation escalated, and in February 2000, Katherine stabbed Price in the chest and he kicked her out of the house again. He took a restraining order out on her, but he had to wait 4 weeks to attend court. And that evening, his friends begged him not to return home. Pricey said that he feared she would kill his children if he was not there. He stated that if he did not turn up to work the following day, she would have killed him. He spent the evening with neighbours and did not return home until 11 p.m, at which point he went to bed, having found that Katherine had sent the children to a sleepover at a friend's house. While Pricey had been taking out the restraining order, Katherine had filmed her children and herself making statements on a video that could be perceived as some sort of crude will, and she bought herself some new underwear. She arrived at Pricey's house after he fell asleep and woke him, and the two had sex, likely because Price was terrified to turn her down. The following day, the neighbours, being aware of the situation, were concerned that Pricey's car was still in the drive at 6 a.m. They contacted the police. The police arrived about 8 a.m. and kicked in the door to find Katherine unconscious from consuming a large amount of pills and Pricey's remains. Evidence suggests that she began stabbing Pricey with her butcher's knife while he was sleeping and went on to stab him at least 37 times, with blows savage enough to reach his internal organs involved. He tried to turn on the light and attempted to get away from her. He did manage to make it to the door, but then either fell back or was dragged back into the house where he bled out. Immediately after committing the murder, Katherine travelled to an ATM and took out $1,000 from Pricey's account. After returning to the house, she skinned Price's body and hung the skin from a meat hook. When the police officers saw the scene, they described this as looking like a wetsuit. She decapitated him and cooked parts of his body in a stew, placing his head in a cooking pot with vegetables. She made 3 servings of her diabolical meal, 2 for Price's sons, which she put out on the table with notes for them, and a 3rd serving was found on the lawn, suggesting Katherine had tried to eat it but could not manage to do so. She posed the rest of Pricey's remains with the arm draped over a drink and his legs crossed. As if all this wasn't enough, Katherine left a note falsely accusing Pricey of raping her daughter. Katherine pleaded not guilty to murder when her offer to plead guilty to manslaughter was rejected. The jury were made aware of the graphic nature of the case and some had to be replaced. Several more jurors who attempted to stay also left. At this point, Katherine pled guilty to murder and the judge ordered a psychiatric evaluation to see if she was stable enough to make that decision. The defence had intended to argue that she had disassociation and amnesia, but this had not been supported by most assessments. It was found, however, that Katherine did suffer from borderline personality disorder, but she did have the capacity to make decisions. Despite her plea, she refused to accept responsibility for what she'd done and became hysterical when the crime details were described in court. Justice O'Keefe, motivated by Katherine's lack of remorse, sentenced her to life in prison without parole and said to mark her documents never to be released. Katherine did appeal in 2006, claiming life in prison was too severe for her crime. This appeal was appropriately denied. On the 20th anniversary of this horrific crime, John Chillingworth revealed that he still visits Katherine to this day and provided a rare insight into the mind of her. He said she's never been better. She seems more relaxed and confident in herself. She just seems different. She goes to see a psychiatrist regularly and over the years she's done a lot of self-improvement work. He said that the last time he visited her in Silverwater Jail, they spoke about family, old times. Sorry, can you imagine? Can you remember that time you ate your boyfriend? What she's been doing in prison and what she's doing to get well. He said despite the order that she'll never be released, she still holds ambitions of one day walking free, having seen a significant change in her personality and demeanour over the years. Chillingworth said she would like to get out for her children's sake and to meet her new grandchildren. She would love that. She does a pottery class and she's pretty good at it. She likes painting. She seems to be calmer and mixes with the other girls. He said he believes she's not a threat to society, but whether society would agree with her being released, he doesn't think so. And he said everyone made Pricey out to be some angel, but Pricey was never an angel. What happened to him was the worst imaginable. It was horrific, but it was a volatile relationship. I knew him well, years before he was seeing Katherine. And he said, finally, I think everyone deserves a second chance. So what creates a killer like Katherine Mary Knight? Well, Katherine's case is very rare. Very few female killers mutilate bodies, let alone eat them. So that's very unusual. Though it doesn't justify what she did, it helps us understand, if we look at her background, what creates somebody like her. So her background was tumultuous, her home life was tumultuous. This would have given her maladaptive coping skills and controlling behaviour that was self-destructive and counterproductive. And this is what we see time and time again in our relationships. She was given opportunities to get help on a few occasions. However, I would question the involvement of the authorities in this instance, because I am very perturbed that a woman who tried to murder her child the previous day was allowed to discharge herself from hospital. There should have been a holding period put on Katherine at that time and she should have received treatment and did not. So I don't believe in Katherine's case that this is Vorarephilia, which is a cannibalistic fetish linked to sexual perversion. I don't believe that's what it is. It is involved in the act of eating, being eaten, watching this people being eaten. I don't believe that's what it is. I think there's something deeper to it. When you look at cases such as Richard Trenton Chase, he was suffering from psychosis when he committed these cannibal acts. He was consuming the blood of his victims because he believed that aliens were turning his blood to powder. Similar, so he was completely psychotic. But then on the other hand, you've got Armin Muse, the cannibal of Rotenburg is what he's otherwise known as. He was a perfect gentleman, had no affectations, no strangeness about him, perfectly normal member of society, very affable. Even the police officers on his case commented that if they had not known themselves, they would not have thought he would be capable of something like that. He had no mental illness at all and made that decision to invite somebody to his house on mutual agreement to consume his flesh. In Katherine's case, I believe it's about control. All her life she was controlling, threatening, and did this in a pattern of fear and abuse to get people to do what she wanted them to do. She was all right to leave her partners, but they were not okay to leave her because that was not her choice. And her attempt to consume Pricey's flesh could be viewed as the ultimate act of dominance over him, and he was the ultimate prey. He wasn't doing anything else after that day that she didn't see. She had chosen what his end was going to be and did it in the most awful, undignified way possible. As always, a very warm thank you very much indeed for watching. Because I choose to cover content that is viewed as controversial by YouTube, YouTube do demonetize my videos. So the support from our wonderful members is much appreciated and their names are down below. If you wish to support the channel, there are links on the channel page and also in the video description. Stay wonderful, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.